Question number 4 on the reading portion of College Board's Test 4. The sentence in lines 10 to 13, for years, mainly serves to. So mainly serves to, what does it bring to the table? What does it offer? What is it bringing and telling us that is not said anywhere else in the piece? Mainly serves to, I like to think of, it's like, why did the author bother writing it? Again, and what does it bring to the table? What is the biggest thing that it adds to the story that is not said anywhere else? So let's take a look at what this sentence is talking about first. So for context, for the first time there is born upon me the full truth of what I myself said to my doctor only an hour ago, that my motives in this undertaking are not clear. And now here's the quote that we are being asked about. For years, for a lifetime, the machinery of my destiny has worked in secret to prepare for this moment. Its clockwork has moved exactly towards this time and place and no other. So it's describing how the machinery of his destiny, like his fate, his kind of destiny, has been pushing him in one movement and in one direction. It's been preparing him for this one moment. Its clockwork has moved exactly towards this time and place and no other. So I think this line is talking about how his fate or his whole life has been pushing him towards this one task or one journey. And this is that clockwork that is being described and that machinery metaphor over and over in the piece. So the sentence in line 10 to 13 mainly serves to A, expose a side of the narrator that he prefers to keep hidden. This is not like some Jekyll and Hyde thing. He's like, don't see me like this. I don't want you to know that I've been being pushed by my fate. I don't understand what that means. When do we ever get a sense that he doesn't want people to not see a side of him? He's like, no, don't see me like this. Bizarre. What about B? That line mainly serves to demonstrate that the narrator thinks in a methodical and scientific manner. That's like a third grade understanding of that. You read this and you see machinery and you look at clockwork and you immediately think, this guy thinks in a methodical manner because he's in a balloon and he's going to the North Pole. If anything, he's a very romantic character, probably the opposite of logical. That he's doing this not for any reason. There's no reason to do this other than to understand himself. So I would actually argue he's maybe not methodical and not scientific at all, even though the trappings of his journey might seem scientific. So very low level understanding of it. Really, you have to raise the bar when you think about this passage, not in terms of those motivations, but in terms of the individual, right? Because remember, in these stories, it's always about the individual. It's always about the character. And it's always how they feel towards themselves and towards others. C. That line mainly serves to show that the narrator feels himself to be influenced by powerful and independent forces. So I like on how this answer choice feels like it's confusing. I hope you guys pick up on that feeling that they almost tried to make this answer sound wrong. And that every human picks up on that. Whether or not you acknowledge that and you're confident and you're intellectually mature enough to admit that to yourself is a whole nother story. So for me, when I read that, my first thought is like, this sounds weird, but I didn't know why. But what is it saying? This line mainly serves to show that the narrator feels himself to be influenced by powerful and independent forces. What is he saying? He's saying the machinery of destiny has moved him to prepare for this moment, that his clockwork has moved towards this time and no other. So this is something that we need to realize shows this powerful force, this invisible hand that's pushing him towards this fateful, rendezvous with, history, with this event of being the first person to go to the North Pole. So I like the fact that this is talking about fate, not his own, feelings or his own actions are the reason for his current situation. I like that. Let's look at D though, just to be sure. D, emphasize the length of time during which the narrator is prepared for his expedition. Excellent bad answer. D is a very, very good bad answer, and we need to understand why it's such a good bad answer. Because it stops short of C's abstracted quality about why the narrator is going on his journey. It stops short of talking about the machinery of his destiny or his fate. That this is his divine, providence. D though only talks about, it takes a long time to prepare. Man, it's saying that for a lifetime that the machinery of his destiny has been working in secret. That's a long time. So it's talking about how long he's been preparing for this. And also understand how the test makers stack the question. They put C, which was a very confusing answer, which is ultimately, I think, going to be the right answer. And then right after, they bring an answer that sounds much better. It's much easier to understand, and it's easier for someone to, coming right off a rebound of C, which is like confusion, to feel confident and to feel comfort in being, yeah, the answer is going to be D. But realize that's a trap. Because what is D saying? We're emphasizing the length of time during which the narrator is prepared for his expedition. Is this really the main reason why the author decided to write these lines? That he wanted to talk about how the narrator is spending a lot of time preparing? That's not what he's saying. It's not like he's doing these exercises and doing, cold weather preparation, and he's preparing for his whole life. That since the age of 2, he's been preparing for this journey. Fate, it's saying, has been pushing him in directions, left or right, this decision versus that decision, in order to allow him to arrive at this point in time where he can now say, I'm going to the North Pole. But he hasn't been preparing for his expedition for his entire life. Destiny has pushed him in one direction or another so that he is in the moment right now in order to say, I'm going to the North Pole. Furthermore, I don't think that if you have to say, is this why the author is bringing this up in order to just talk about the length of time that he's been preparing for this trip? No, he's talking about the powerful forces at play that are causing him to make this decision. That his destiny has worked in secret. That this has been preparing him for this moment. And in this time and place and no other time. So when we understand the deficiencies of D, even though it might seem at first to be a really good answer because it hits on all the base level, surface level reading of that quote, that's not actually what's happening. Just like, in the previous question, or rather just like in the previous answer choice where it's very surface level, oh, he thinks in a scientific manner. It's like, no, maybe you can read this whole piece and start pulling information from it and realizing, it's scientific, it's very, explorer-like, we're going in a hot air balloon, that must be scientific. Just like D is exactly wrong as well, where we say it emphasizes the length of time during which the narrator is prepared. That's not the reason. We're talking about fate and destiny and the ability of this clockwork and machinery to move him towards this time and place. That I consider to be power. He's influenced by powerful and ultimately independent. He's unable to control them because that is exactly what destiny and fate is. Meanwhile, D comes up short. Length of time, that's not why the author is writing about this, because he could have just said, I've been preparing for this trip for 3 years or 10 years or 20 years, but he doesn't. He talks about the aspect of fate and destiny and how that plays into his ultimate decision. This is actually a tough answer. I can understand if you guys pick D, but realize not besides why D is wrong, why it's so tempting to pick right after C. Because C makes you feel uncomfortable. When you read it, it makes you feel like you don't want to pick it. That's that classic College Board mandate. They want to make the right answer look wrong, and that's exactly what they did with C, and they want to make the wrong answer look right, and they do that by putting such an appealingly worded answer choice with D right after C. The answer number 4 is going to be C. When we really think big picture, why is the author talking about this? Is this really just to show that he physically has been preparing his whole life for this expedition? That's not what this is about. It's about how he is being guided by this invisible hand, and it's pushing him towards this fate. That he is soon to, that he is soon to accept and reckon with. The answer again, number 4, is going to be C.